Welcome to Beyond the Blend, the podcast that goes behind the science and talks to the people at the heart of the lubricant market, telling the real story of the people who make the lubricant market move. With real insight and honest conversations, we aim to show off the people's side from across the entire lubricant supply chain. Join me, Steve Knapp, and Rob Taylor as we delve behind the scenes of the lubricant industry. Let's go. Let's go with the quick fire 5. Sweet or savory?
Sweet.
City or countryside?
Oh boy, that's a difficult one. If I could do a mix of both, I would, but city is always good for me.
Sunrise or sunset?
Sunrise.
Test the waters or dive in?
Dive in all the time.
Trinidad or Tobago?
Trinidad.
Whoa,
Trinidad.
We got it.
I'm a Trini.
Well, we got it. Well, welcome to Beyond the Blend, Sanya, and it's great to be talking with you. You know,
I know.
We were just discussing before we come live. We kind of know each other, but we know each other through LinkedIn, right?
Yes, we do. Like, I've been seeing you popping up in my feed. Thanks for that. And, we're always interacting. So I'm glad we actually got the chance to finally have some time to talk. Because I think I was in the UK earlier this year and I missed you because you were somewhere else. I'm like, why? Why am I missing you? Why are we doing this?
Yeah, you were in Manchester, I think, and we were somewhere else. It was very unfortunate.
We need to plan better.
Well, we made a deal. We made a deal, right? That we're coming to Trinidad. So
yeah, I'm ready.
Fantastic. So look, I mean, let's just start this so people know. I'm sure people know who you are, but let's just share a little bit about Strategic Reliability Solutions. Now, I know you get asked this a lot, but let's just sort of pitch out where and why this is there and how you help people and what you do.
Oh boy. So Strategic Reliability Solutions Limited, which is a mouthful to say on any morning. It was actually the brainchild of, I finished, and we will probably go into my story a little bit later, but I really wanted to have a hub where we could have different reliability solutions. And see if you notice, lubrication is at the heart of it. And lubrication connects every single little thing. But you need expertise in all of the different areas. So I wanted to have this sort of a hub where we could have all of the great experts together in one place. People could access them for all different types of reliability solutions. And we're based in Trinidad and Tobago, which is a bonus, especially at this time of the year, because it's warm and we have very high temperatures. I'm not saying this to, tell Steve anything, but just saying, we're in Trinidad and Tobago.
I mean, the idea of getting experts in one place, I guess in a more digital world that we now live in now, right? That's hugely possible, isn't it?
It is. And when I started it about 7 years ago, I didn't fully think that we would ever be truly physically all in one space at one point in time. It was always the intention to be global, to have global experts. And like most of my affiliates are in different countries. So there's some of them that I've never met in person before. And they're due for a trip to Trinidad. If they like it or not, they better get here. But we work internationally. And that's what I absolutely love about it, is that you can be at any place at any time and still get some stuff done, still be able to help people. You don't have those barriers that you would have had like 10 years ago, 10, 20 years ago, where you had to physically be there. Like, thank God for technology. I love that. Definitely love that part.
I mean, we see this in the space where I focus in the sales space, how that need to be in the room. It's a slow behavioral change, right? Because people still really think they should be there. But you're absolutely right. There can be so much done that is not physical, but to use your words, you still get stuff done, right?
Yes, definitely. And you still add value at the end of the day. Like you can't put value in this little box and say, okay, well, it's only going to be physically available to you. You can do that virtually now. So, Hats off to technology.
Well, let's keep embracing technology, because for sure that's the one thing that's going to move faster than anything around us.
Definitely
I can
faster than
imagine
you and
that.
I, for sure.
Yeah. Definitely me at my age. But look, I get what you do, and I get that bit. But what got you there? Because I kind of just don't get I don't logically see why you would want to create this environment. Yeah,
Why,
tell me,
right?
share with us.
Oh boy. So it's very interesting because I have my bachelor's in electrical and computer engineering. You know that has nothing to do with oil. Not a thing, right? So I did do my bachelor's in that and I worked in the field for a little bit. And then there was this position that opened up with Shell Lubricants. And I went to the interview. And I know it was good. It was a good interview. After the interview, the guy who interviewed me, he called me back and he was like, Sanya, I like how you interviewed. You have these two things going against you. And I'm like, okay, I'm waiting for him to drop the bombshell. And he's like, you're female and you're young. I'm like, well, there it goes. I can't change anything about that. And then he's like, while those are going against you, because everybody else that interviewed for this position, they were male, they were older, they had experience in the field. He's like, I think it can go in your favor and I'm going to hire you because I think that you have the drive and the tenacity to, be shaped in this industry and to actually make a difference. So I'm so grateful for him for giving me that opportunity how many other years ago. And I worked with Shell as their DFLTS. And I know you're very familiar with these acronyms. I will pop saw it all over the place. But I was with them for about 5 years and trained with some of the best in the Caribbean, in the US, all over the world, really. I may have been responsible for a lot of them getting gray hairs before their time because I asked a lot of questions. A lot of questions. And they're like, why are you asking that question? And then they're like, we should be asking this question. Why is it that somebody else has to prompt us into this direction? During my time with Shell, I started to do my master's in engineering asset management. Of course, I did my thesis on lubrication. Like, what else would I do it on? But when I did that, like, as I was writing my thesis, I realized that the quality of the work that I was doing was not what I was accustomed to giving. And it was because I was being like pulled and tugged all over the place with work and stuff. And I decided to quit my job, which is not something I recommend everybody to do, when they're in that position. But I quit my job and I didn't have a backup plan. I started reaching out to all of these experts within the field. And this is like 7 years ago, literally like 7, 8 years ago. So, technology wasn't where it is now. And everybody that I reached out to, they were so open and, so willing to share, which I loved, absolutely love about our industry, because I think that's the one thing that sets us apart, especially in the lubrication world. I started thinking, wouldn't it be cool if we had one place where, people could just go to get some sort of, reliability solutions? And I said, you know what? It has to be strategic. That's how we got to strategic reliability solutions. And that's really how it was born. Because I started during that time, I finished off my thesis, and then I worked with ExxonMobil for some time. They recruited me to train their people within the Caribbean to get, familiar with lubricants and all of that. So I'm very, very familiar with this world. Then, we had COVID happen. It did a lot of things, and some things brought the world a little bit closer. And during that time, well, I was a little bit bored. Let's be honest. I didn't have as much to do. And I said, let me write this book. And I wrote the first book that I wrote was Lubrication Degradation Mechanisms, a complete guide. I wrote the book, and then I told my publisher, I'm not going to publish this book until I have some sort of a certification that proves that I am a lubrication expert. Because at that time, all of my certifications would have been, my bachelor's or my master's. And that doesn't really have anything to do with lubrication. And I mean, I know you're also familiar with this, but with ICML, you have the MLT, the MLA, the LLA, and then you have the highest level, which is the MLE. And ideally, what most people do is that they go through the lower levels, then they go to the MLE. And I'm like, nope, going straight for the MLE. I went for the MLE, I got the certification, and then I published the book because I didn't want that. I know even though our industry is very accepting and we're very close-knit, there's always this stigma. I'm trying to put it very nicely here, Steve. There's always this stigma attached with, is she female? Does she know what she's doing? So that's why I wanted to make sure that I had that certification before I published that book. And then, I mean, from then, there have been several books that have been published. And of course, the Woman in STEM series, which I love, absolutely love. But I digress so much there. I'm sorry, Steve.
No, you didn't. I mean, I'm sure people were absolutely fascinated by that. And what a journey, and there are some things that jumped out that I'd really want to talk about. And I think the female and young piece, we'll come to that, right?
Definitely.
We've got to come to that. But there were some things that you said around two attributes that I found really interesting: drive and tenacity. You used the words that this guy saw in you, drive and tenacity. Where does that come from? Where does that start?
I think that starts just from basically my personality. It's always been like that. I've always been the one, trying to be the one to break the barriers so that other people can enter. And that has been like something that's stuck with me from childhood. Because while I was growing up, I knew I wanted to be an engineer, but I didn't know what one looked like. I didn't know that one could look like me. And I was like, no, this shouldn't be, and I may date myself a little bit. The internet didn't exist back then, so I couldn't go and look it up. But, I wanted to make sure that other people knew that if they wanted to be an engineer or if they wanted to go into a particular field, there was somebody that looked like them. Because I think that is where it starts at, having that identity, knowing that somebody else could do it, so I can do it too. So that has been like at the forefront of everything that I do, make sure I break those barriers so that somebody else could enter. And they'll probably do it better than I do, but I could start by breaking down the barriers for them.
Well, they'd have to be quite exceptional to do better than you've just described to us, by the way. Breaking barriers. I mean, I think that's incredible. So there's a bit of a pioneer in your makeup, right?
I love that word, Steve. I absolutely love that word. And without dropping too much hints, the third Woman in STEM book is going to be coming out next year. And that's one of the main themes throughout the book. You did it. Even you did it.
Well, I mean, because, I'm the father of 3 daughters, and it's interesting what you say. If I Google engineers and I look at Google images, right? Some years back, they certainly wouldn't look like you, Sanya,
no,
right? Certainly wouldn't look like you. And back then, you were going to Shell for this interview, and just to even have in the conscious mind of the organization that you're female and young and they are against you, it was great that you had somebody that was forward thinking and prepared to take what isn't a risk, but he might have been putting his decision certainly very visible, because I have no comprehension of this. How does that play out? Like, you're young and female. It's almost like saying, yeah, well done, Sherlock. You're the greatest you're the greatest detective in the world. I am young and female. How does that make you feel?
Well, the first thing I thought about was, okay, well, there's nothing I can do to change that. Either you accept it or you don't, but know that you'll be passing up a lot of value if you do. So I was very grateful for him. And I think what stemmed from that is that he also has daughters. So he may have, to the back of his mind, he's like, you know what? I could see that. And it's something that he's done throughout the time that he was at Shell with me, you know, going into these meetings. And when we get into these meetings, it's not because things are nice and rosy. It's because there are problems on the plants. And half of the times, you get into the room and somebody goes up to you and they come up to me and they say, "Oh my gosh, you're the same age as my granddaughter, not my daughter, my granddaughter." I'm like, okay, well, I don't know how to respond to that, but thanks. Like I'm not sure what to say at that point in time. But most of the times when you get into these rooms, there may be like 12 to 14 male engineers. And the first thing that they do is that they check your competency before they can trust you. Like, I don't know, it doesn't happen to other guys, right? When they get into the room with these technical meetings. But I've had, them go around the table to ask me these very basic questions before they could get to the point where we're at, let's start talking about the real issue here. And, having male advocates, as I always say, it's always very helpful. And the guy from the interview, he was my boss. And half the times when we go to these meetings, they would say, "So what do you think?" to him. And he's like, "I'm just the driver here today. She's the expert. You ask her because she's the one who has to answer you. And she's the one that will help you with this." So just, relaying that trust and that confidence, that helps so much because and sometimes male allies don't realize how much it can help, but it is helpful, especially in those situations. And for like the females, when they go through that, I know it's like, oh my gosh, I have to always be so prepared because I don't know what they're going to ask me. But that's what at the beginning of my career, it was like that. Like, I had to be always on top of things, to the forefront, make sure that I know like everything, or, I have this large expanse of knowledge, which is not easy, but it's also very good for me because I like to be challenged and, I like to make sure I have all the information. So that's a good part about it. But sometimes when you get into these rooms, the thing is not to necessarily answer the question. And that sounds weird, but when they start asking these questions, one of the ways to, I would say, help gain their trust would be to ask them the question. Ask it back to them. Do it in a sort of a coaching reverse way so that at the end of it, they're like, "Oh my God, you know what she was talking about all the time? I'm the idiot. Let me see what's going on here." And it helps break down so many barriers at a faster rate. But they learn something at the same point in time.
So it's incredible to hear that because leadership really matters, right? So I think this guy a little way back when he gave you this job,
yes,
he showed leadership, and I think anybody listening in shouldn't underestimate their role as leaders, the difference between manager and a leader, and I think that's really significant to hear how his leadership, in some ways, whether it helped or it certainly didn't hinder your career, it just created a level playing field, which is absolutely right. But then we start to hear again about your drive in breaking barriers, right? I need to know everything. I need to challenge them. I need to show them that I'm the best. Or not you didn't say the best. Let me reframe that.
Oh, yeah.
You want to be the best. Right, there we go. I was once, just as we chat, one thing I was told by a senior leader once before, female leader, she says the difference between men and women when we go into a meeting, she said, you men would have had your alignment meetings outside of the room, where I, as a female, come to the meeting prepared to have the discussion about the topic. So whilst you have already aligned and you show your collaboration and how, I'm there for a very different reason. I'm there to discuss the meeting, yet I'm not therefore given the chance because you've already decided things. It just took me back to that moment where this lady told me this thing about you pitching up to meetings and having to fight to prove your position,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm. And to try to help them, because like at the end of the day, we're on the same team. We're still trying to solve the problem. Like, try to get them to that level where they realize that, okay, well, you know what? She's not here to, I'm not here to, do this attack or any of these things. We're just trying to solve the problem and get them to that level.
Yeah. So tell me, third book coming. First book, you needed the highest level of accreditation, right? You needed that. This self-validation part, is that still there? How does that play out?
So I'm not sure if it's self-validation or validation for society.
Explain.
That is a total different thing, right? So I was comfortable in the material that I wrote for the first book. I'm like, yeah, I know this is solid. But how is it going to be received by the public? How is society going to receive it? Are they going to say, this is just a female from the Caribbean who may not know a thing about lubrication? She doesn't have any certifications that I could see or that I could prove that she knows about lubrication. Why would I want to read the book? So that's what it is. Because females, and this sounds terrible, but a lot of females, they have to do some sort of validation or some sort of credential, or they feel that they have to before they get to a particular point or before they're taken seriously. Whereas there are some guys who bluff it for the entire of their career and they get through no matter what, right? It's like, it's so strange. It's so strange.
I tell you, I'm, as I've mentioned, from the sales world, and I think people bluffing it. I mean, it's probably going to lose us a lot of listeners and me a lot of followers, but I think there is a little bit about that. It's very, very true. And whilst it's quite sad to some degree that that's the case, are you seeing? I mean, this is a personal view that I'm asking for here. Are you seeing more and more female role models and leaders? Tell me about that. What do you observe?
So what I've started to see over the past few years, and I think this came again probably out of COVID as well, we started to see female leaders emerging a lot more. And these are not like leaders to say, oh my gosh, this is the highest level of something. No, we're starting to see the female leaders emerge at every level in the organization. And I think COVID had a bit of a role to play in that when everybody was working from home, a lot of people realize how much women do on a regular basis in terms of balancing a lot of different roles, a lot of different responsibilities. And it was their time to shine. Like, they were allowed the flexibility to work from home. So now they could manage a lot more things, whereas in the past, they may not have had that flexibility. And now coming out of COVID, we have a lot more things changing in that people can work from home for a few days for the week, which may be their most productive days when you really think about it. Or they could work flexible hours when they get the time, and it shows because you're starting to see more you're starting to see more value coming into the organization. And you're starting to realize this person is really leading the pack. Whereas the others who may be coming to the office all the time because they physically can, may not be getting as much work done. So I think another thing that I'm seeing is that people are starting to share their story. And in the past, we did not have much of that. People were like, I got to the top, I made it. That's it. I'm not going to tell anybody my trade secrets or, help anybody else along the way. But we are changing that, and a lot, and I'm going to say it's like a generational thing as well, in that I see that a lot more with the younger generation, like my generation. They're coming up through the ranks and they're like, okay, this is how I did it. This is what you can do. This is how I managed to handle all of these things. These are some of the issues that I had, and this is how I solved them. And we're seeing people share that more. And like, that's what I love so much about the book, the Woman in STEM series, is because we have women and men. I have male authors too, don't worry about it. I always include the guys. They share their stories. And I remember, like, in the first book, we had somebody he was ex-US military and teaching in one of the schools. And he was, trying to tell other guys how you can help women, because a lot of women came up to him at the end of the class and like, thank you for listening to me. Thank you for answering my questions, because some of the other instructors didn't. They just didn't answer their questions because they didn't see them. And we think like that should not be happening, right? But it is still happening in some places. Just bringing the awareness to both the men and the women, that is what we need to do. And I think that we're seeing that movement right now. So we're seeing more female leaders coming in. And it's not a male versus female thing, because we have to work on this together. Like, that's the only way we could survive, by working on this together. So it's never about, putting the guys down. It's always about working together for humanity at the end of the day, not just.
So I think it's really good that you're seeing this, and particularly this sort of area where I think it's really important that, we see these role models. We see these people that we aspire to. So the younger you sees what that engineer looks like and sees what they've achieved, sees what the art of the possible here is. And I think that is, something that you should be very proud of.
Thank you.
And I'm sure you are, but recognized for as well, because, as we run these Beyond the Blend podcasts, this is the kind of message we want to get out to people, that anything is possible in the lube space. It's a diverse and broad spectrum of opportunity. And if
no
you are
friction involved.
Incredible. And if you are seeing that diversity is a bit more equal, then that has got to be seen as a very positive thing. So I now want to move. That's your story. I mean, that's all we got to, your story, right? And that's how the chat went on. But as I start to think about, you being in Trinidad, just to rub it in, how do you thrive as a global operator? Just give us some tips and hints for people who are maybe more virtually spread out. How does someone like you make it work for you? How do you make it work?
You show up, and you show up every single day. That's the basic thing about it. Being in Trinidad, you never really have people come to visit Trinidad as often. They're like, I'm visiting the US, I'm visiting the UK. Are you going to be there? No. A lot of times it's not, the main destination that a lot of people go to. So you need to be able to connect with people. And I think that's one of the main things that I try to do a lot, because I know that I have a lot of value to share, and I try to make sure that I reach as many people as possible. So starting off in the industry, I connected with a lot of people. I made sure I do, like, oh my gosh, Steve, I write a lot, quite a bit. I'm always writing articles. I'm always trying to do like these podcasts and these webinars, because it's always about trying to spread the word and trying to spread the awareness and getting people to understand that you're not in this alone. There are some people who can help you. There are some people who look like you, who can identify with you. I think that is one of the main things as well, because half of the times the problem that you're trying to solve has been solved by somebody else, just in a different part of the world, It may be the same exact conditions, but you just need to find that person or find like somebody who helped with that problem. And that's one of the things that I want to do. That's one of the things that I try to do all the time. Because people ask me like, oh, so how did you do this? So how did you do that? And I'm like, I didn't, but somebody else that I know did. So I can, share information with you. I don't mind like always sharing information with people. So it's always about connecting. And I think that's the main reason behind all of these things. It's about being able to connect and being able to help or show the value that you bring to somebody else. Because it shouldn't matter what physical location you are in the world, whether you're on a beach, not rubbing it in again, Steve, on a beach in the warm sun, or, somewhere in the cold.
Like here. But I think and I hope the listeners are hearing this as well. This thing about turning up every day, being present every day, talks back into your drive and tenacity. It really seems to be, almost that seam that's running through you, right? Because it's hard to turn up every day because it takes time and effort. But I don't imagine it's ever been more possible to turn up every day. And when we start to see your writing, your podcasts, your information, your books, it really is possible. So making it happen through drive and tenacity, I think, are really important things for people to hear, because it doesn't just happen. You have to go and make it happen, right?
You do. You have to put in that work every day. You have to show up. You have to make sure. You have to know your reason behind doing that. And I think that part is also very important, because if you don't have a reason for doing it, then you're not going to do it.
Yeah. Well, I know yours is breaking barriers. Barriers.
Always.
So we've got to this point and everything's great. Everything's rosy. Everything's good. Yeah, we've had this great career. We took a break when we quit our job, but we found our purpose, and we're really, we're authoring great books. COVID came along. Things were not so busy, but we've recalibrated and we've found ourselves. Through all of that time, there's bound to have been challenges,
Oh yeah.
So what I'm interested in maybe exploring now is for the listeners, what has been the biggest challenge? What was it? Maybe give us some context. How did you overcome it? And what would be that lesson that we could share?
Like, a lot of times it's just showing up in front of the classroom and people questioning, I'm sorry, are you here to make the coffee? What are you here to do? Are you here to take notes or something? Are you the admin? So I get asked that question a lot of times, because there were times that I would before I started training, I don't necessarily say who I am or my background, because sometimes that gives, it makes people feel as though, oh my gosh, I'm not going to listen to her. She's an engineer, or I don't want to listen to her because and they form this whatever opinion of you. And that was one of the ways that I started off some of my trainings in the past. And a lot of times my reason for doing that is that you go in without any expectations, with them having any expectations of you, and then they realize the value that you bring. So you could talk about your background afterwards and say, you did all these great things. But if you go in initially just having that standard where you're like, you know what, don't have this preconceived notion of me. We're going to add the value, you're going to understand it, and then you can form your opinions afterwards. But I've had issues in the past where people, stop me during the presentation, and I'm like, do we have any questions? And the guy jumps up and he's like, yes, I need to know that you're qualified enough to speak to me about this product. I'm like, are you sure you want to know that answer? And he's like, yes, I need to know. I need to know before we go any further on this presentation. And I'm like, okay, well, you asked for it. And, I would say my qualifications. And then he's like, okay, I just needed to know that. And then he's silent for the rest of the training. I'm like, why do we need to have that validation process? Or people have that mindset where if you're female, you may not know what you're talking about. I mean, sometimes it may happen to a young male, I would say, just starting off in the industry, they're going to, question him, are you qualified enough? Do you have enough experience? So I'm not saying that just happens to females, but I've seen that like time and time again, just through my, experiences. And it's something that you need to address very delicately, because once somebody jumps up and they ask you about that, the first thing is that there's a lot of ego involved. So you don't want to hurt somebody's ego. The second thing is your main aim is really to deliver value to them. So you want to make sure that that person trusts you at the end of the day and that they can receive the value. Whether they like you or not, you want them to receive the value. So humor works a lot in those situations. Believe it or not, it works a lot. A lot of times when people ask me, what is my background? I'm like, whatever's behind me. That's what it's going to be today. Whatever is behind me. That's it. But, it's about really trying, and again, we're talking about, again, breaking down those barriers, trying to meet people at the level that they're at and saying, what, I'm just here to help you. That's it. I'm not here to take your job. I'm not here to tell you that you don't know what you're doing. I'm not here to judge you. We're on the same team. We're trying to make the difference together, hopefully, and make that impact and, have that value. Because it's something that I still struggle with. I show up and I tell people about, strategic reliability solutions, and they're like, oh my God, this is a great idea. Who is the guy that came up with it? Oh my God.
I mean, listening to this, and there's some great advice. I mean, I'm hearing resilience, but I'm now thinking, why do you need to be resilient? Because actually the problem is the male side of this. And I'm sat here feeling rather uncomfortable, actually, that
Oh boy.
even now there are these moments where you're having to prove your self-worth. And I'm thinking of my 3 daughters and their work and their workplaces, and whether we go as far as to say it's sort of misogyny, but it's ignorance for sure, right? It's ignorance for sure.
Well, when you think about that, Steve, it is part ignorance, but it's also a part of authenticity. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting topic, because one of my authors for the second book that we did for Women in STEM, she's actually doing her PhD on this, authenticity of the female engineer. How are they really authentic or not? And it's something that we see a lot with female engineers, is that when they get out into the workplace, or even like going through their program, they want to be one of the boys because they want to be accepted. So they start having that dilemma from early on. And that's something that I had struggled with initially as well, because, I don't want to stand out. I don't want to be, I'm already sticking out because I'm the female in the room, but, I don't want to stand out even more because, I will wear a bright colored top or, very, feminine stuff. So you start scaling back a lot. So it's something that she investigated, and one of the results of her investigation was that a lot of men were not showing up authentically at the workplace. So it was something with them, and then they questioned the females. So it was very interesting that she was getting that feedback, because it was a matter of awareness and of them being aware of how authentic they are. because sometimes they want to be perceived, in a particular way in the workplace. So because of that, they may perceive others in a different way because they want to be perceived in this particular way. It sounds so weird, but when she did her research, like that's another part of her research that she has to do. And I found that was very interesting because we can't say that the guys are the problem. I think at the end of the day, it's an awareness problem. And in the engineering field, just, is a very dominant field. You have to be the alpha or all of these things, but that's not true. We've made it into that, but it's not true. We are just really here to solve problems.
Yeah. I think it's a great point of reflection as we sort of come to the end of our time together, which for me has just flown by. I think it's a really important point of reflection that are there these alter egos at play in the workplace from a male perspective that is hiding the true potential? Are there conscious bias still out there? Which, wow, that's incredible to think. But I think important that we all take inspiration from, the barriers that you're breaking and continue to break, because you outlined to us things that probably we never want to hear about for our families, right? You're young and you're female. They're the strengths, by the way, of my daughters,
Yes.
that they are young and female, that they are not their weaknesses, as indeed with you. Your strength is you are young, you're female, you've got drive and tenacity, you're breaking barriers, you run your own company, you've got a global group of experts together around reliability. Your third book about pioneers is on its way.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. What else could be next from you, Sanya?
Well, might have to keep that on the wraps until 2025. But I'm trying to get to that European region, though. And I will tell you when I'm in that region for sure. For sure.
Fantastic. Well, look, I've really enjoyed our conversation. It's been long overdue, and I'm really pleased we've had that. I hope the listeners, like me, have taken so much sort of inspiration and learning from this conversation. Now, just to share with the listeners, whereabouts can they connect with you and see more of your work? Where would you guide them to?
I'm always on LinkedIn, Steve. Always on LinkedIn. So just look for me on LinkedIn at Sanya Mathura, and maybe put in Trinidad if you can't find, if there's more than one. But, it should pop up for sure. And you can Google me because you always start seeing all of these articles that are coming out with stuff I talk about with lubrication and gear oils and all of these great things that I love talking about. So, definitely something to look at. Or you could find me on Amazon as well and check out the books that I have that are out there. Maybe even in Walmart. I saw that Walmart added me as a brand recently. So, maybe you could check that out too.
You're everywhere. Fantastic. Sanya, thanks ever so much.
Always my pleasure, Steve.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Beyond the Blend. Be sure to follow us to catch next and future episodes as we continue to explore the people within the lubricant market.